obviously we're meant to do, I don't know, current events, right? The only current event is not those not those kind of current events. Because the Olympics is.
Don't talk about the Olympics.
no, I won't. No, the only current event is obviously
the guy with the big dick who lost pole vaulting. That you saw that?
I feel like there's loads of really good puns or jokes to make about, and I just can't think of them.
Pole on pole action.
Well, yeah, but more specifically,
I'm pretty sure he was Polish. I'm pretty sure. So that's even better. So pole on pole on pole action.
Ooh, pole on pole.
Pole cubed.
Oh, I was about to say.
It's just what they're called.
I was about to say cubed. I was about to say cubed to correct you because I thought you must have said squared because I thought you.
It's a fair assumption.
No, okay, let's just. We can literally do some like 5 seconds. Current events is summer event, and it's exactly what you think. But the hat's okay. It's an octopus, and I've seen it's really janky. I've seen it in game. It literally like the tentacles like fly out like tens of meters every time someone moves it on. And I think the only interesting piece of conversation there would be about the idea of them, I don't know, running out of ideas. They're never going to run out of ideas for these little hats. Maybe you wish they would, because then they might make something different. But it's literally just like, we can just literally make every fucking sea creature under the sun, even though they don't live under the sun, they live under the ocean, and just put like a little flower on it. It's fine. It's so easy to come up with stuff, like really, when it comes down to it. Everyone's like, oh, how many summer hats can you possibly make? Well, they've only done 3 so far. Or 4.
I think there is something we could say, not inherently about the summer event, but about what it kind of means at this point. If we are to assume we get armor, the holiday outfits, as it were.
What's that sound? Is music coming from you?
It's probably Mum's TV.
Oh shit! Oh, what do you have to do with that? Oh, it's just like it's the kind of thing where it would. Right. Yeah, you can. It's the kind of thing where I wonder if it'd be better, like if it was constant, you know, because obviously you have I forgot what it's called actually, but obviously you have the the smart microphone thing, I guess, right? Where it only picks you up when you're actually making sound. But even when it does, we still hear the background noise.
It doesn't pick you up as well, which I find the most impressive thing. It's able to filter out. Like you talking.
Yeah, that is actually interesting. I have thought about that once or twice. I've never like pointed it out. I've just thought about it. It's like, that's interesting, because I guess people don't know, about your incompetencies and the fact that you just have me playing out loud in your room.
Dude, I have actively tried. I tried using my headset. You said it was worse. I tried using the mic and earphones. No. It's worse.
I guess I'll walk back the incompetency thing because I know it's a direct result of me. We don't have as much. Sorry, actually, I was about to bring up the fact that we're making money, but I think you should finish your point that I'm sure you're dying to make about costumes.
What it is, if we are getting one this year, the only one left is Halloween.
Yeah, and I think that's appropriate. I think most people, when it comes to those costumes that we don't really like that much, I think Halloween is by far the most attractive one. I guess because it feels the most appropriate.
Like a onesie or something like that, right? Like a silly kind of costume, like someone will be in like I don't know, like T-Rex costume onesie thing. I mean, ideally, the T-Rex costume where it's like a big inflatable, because that would be amazing.
That would be yeah. I think there's that's probably my own. That's not my only point of contention, but I suppose I could raise that. It's just like, because I don't. Oh, that is silly. Because obviously I don't really care for these things because I don't like silly stuff, but there is a level that you can go to that will make it work, and it's doing things like that, like the inflatable T-Rex costume. Well, I would find it funny enough to not mind. Like the twerking is actually worked in the sense that I was like, no one really likes twerking. It's kind of like, it's quite vulgar. People don't like it. That's why it's viewed as like a sort of more taboo dance. But the,
I mean,
the rigor
Nicki Minaj
and
on it.
the bombast that they poured into that animation, it really,
Yeah.
and it obviously it always takes a few seconds. You basically just have to let them do it and just look at it for a few seconds, and you'll just start cracking. You just because it's just funny. It just looks so funny.
Yeah.
So they can breach that threshold. I mainly I just don't care for them because they're just like very silly and also light-hearted. I like silly stuff when it really leans into it. So I wouldn't mind a fucking inflatable T-Rex costume. Whatever. What I was about to say is I was mentioning because you were talking about the reasons why you have me playing out loud, and I was like, well, maybe you should use our funds to purchase some new equipment.
I don't have any funds because you're taking all of it. All the profits go to Harry.
Not that we should really talk about that.
Just because he makes the thumbnails and makes most of the videos and does all the titles and did basically everything. It's not fair.
So you're like, I guess you're like an investor. Like, you're like, it's like Dragon's Den almost, isn't it? It's a bit like Dragon's Den. You're one of the dragons, except you were also the pitcher at the same time.
Yeah.
You were like, you basically came in and said like, if you run this company, you can get more money than me from it. It's like, yeah, makes sense to me. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Why am I? Let's just cut to the chase. Why are we talking about this? Well, I think this is the first podcast since, but I think this is the first main video since crossing that hallowed numeral. This is disgraceful.
Yeah.
This is hitting
down my corkboard.
1,000 subscribers.
Yeah. I mean, we basically said it on every video now. I mean, actually, I don't know about your videos, but if you celebrated it on there.
One of them. I said it on the Smart Trigger one because that's the one that I almost recorded before it happened. It would have come out afterwards anyway. Like it would have come out when it did, but I almost recorded it quite a while ago. And I was gonna say if I had recorded it quite a while ago, I was gonna mention the fact that based on the current trajectory, I think it's possible we might have hit 1,000 by now, which would be weird. I didn't want to do that, and I had a good enough reason to not record the video at that time anyway. So of course I recorded it after, and I mentioned it. Anyway, but yeah, it happened. It was especially now we've got those decimal points, which I really like. I love the decimal point. It was our only real milestone for the channel. You know, it's like it sounds greedy, even though it's not. The mark of like we've done enough is that we're now making money.
The thing is
we're not making much. That's the point. All that matters is that we are making money. It doesn't matter how much. That's kind of a better way to see it. It's kind of it just means we've reached that point, basically.
It was our videos are and would never be successful, right? There's not a fragment of a chance we'll reach 1 million subscribers, right? Making deep rock videos where we do not edit it and do anything along those lines.
I genuinely think the chances are same for 100,000.
Yeah, it's not. It's a 0% unless we like radically change the formula where it's like I don't know us personality based and people like that. Which I mean, so far I don't know why else we've got 1,000 subscribers, so there's some substance there. But
we might have to become the next Mr. Beast.
You can't be too soon, man.
Too soon. He died too. Oh my god! I forgot to mention. Our former boss just died. Susan.
Oh,
the original CEO of YouTube. She died of cancer at the age of 56 or 54. I
mean,
kind of a shock. What?
When did she leave?
Oh, I don't know, like 2 years ago? She's been gone, but it hasn't been like ages. I don't know. And it's kind of one of those things where
she probably left because of that.
Maybe, yeah.
To get away from stress.
Yeah, I mean, it was undeniably naturally. You see any post like announcing this, and comments that are filled with just utter disrespect. Naturally, but I'm not gonna say anything like what those comments are saying. But it's like I don't care either. She didn't help us. She didn't help us get where we are. We did this by hard work.
Yeah. So the point being that somehow, despite our ability to ramble for like 20 minutes before getting to the point, which we will then proceed to spend like 2 hours on, we've managed to get 1,000 subscribers. Which thank you all for that, because I mean, ultimately it comes down to the viewers, not us really. Unless we wanted to buy a bunch of bots, then it's down to the people. Which I assume some people do, right? You can probably get about that many bots.
Yeah, but I can't think of anything more like just embarrassing and shameful than all you have is 1,000 subscribers, and you had to get there through bots. I'm not saying, okay, I'll say this. I'm not saying we got here through hard work, but we definitely got here through persistence. Just clinging on like a leech. And that is no better emblemized, or there's no, I hope emblemized, it should be a word, right? But it's no better signified by me receiving further warnings about being banned on Reddit for being a spammer. I will say I stopped a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say now is the time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so what happened. It was basically around the time about 2 weeks into me uploading these Overclock showcases, which meant there was actually 3 videos per week, all of which were going on be shared to Reddit. And it was by the second week. It was on the first Driller one, actually, I think. It was either the first or second, actually. It might have actually been the second one, which would have been Crystal Nucleation. And someone, basically... Oh, actually, no, it was the other way around, because I left a gap, basically. It happened one time. Someone basically called me out. I won't say who. All I will say is they had a really fucking stupid name. But they quoted the Reddit, spam guidelines or whatever, or criteria for what makes you a spammer, and I fit into it far too well. It's actually quite embarrassing. I found out that if more than 5% of your posts are self-promotional or something, then you're a spammer. And they also mention what my actual proportions are. It's 90-something% of my posts are self-promotional. And it's also it's if you don't interact with people enough or whatever. And I thought it was stupid, because it is stupid, right? When you think about it, it's there's no way I'm actually polluting anyone's feed, on that Reddit. It's less than 1% of what gets uploaded there. But I was okay, you're not wrong in accordance with Reddit's, very limiting guidelines. So I was okay, I'll give it a week or something to see if it, that does anything. If, not doing that has any bearing. Fast forward a week or a week and a half, I share another video, and then the same guy immediately jumps on me and quotes the guidelines again. It's just you're probably gonna get banned or something for spamming. It's okay. Well, you know what? We've reached 1,000 subscribers. I think it's time to hang up the Reddit cape. I think it's time to... really? Come on.
I think posting to the Reddit was essential at the beginning.
I think it was actually, yeah.
Right? It the point where people talk about it, you go on YouTube, you start a YouTube channel, and you would post stuff into the void, get no one would see it, right? You have another account, don't you, where you just posted your Balloon's TD6.
Yeah, for a week, I uploaded 2 or 3 dozen Bloons Tower Defense 6 videos. I haven't done that in a while, but I did that, and they made me have like, I don't know, 40 views between them all, and it's like 3 dozen videos. And it's like 3 dozen.
Exactly. But like, say you would have like posted that to, like, I don't know, the Bloons CD6 Reddit, that would immediately have like done something.
Yeah.
Right? And that's ultimately what we did at the beginning, because we knew, there's just such a thick wall on YouTube. It just doesn't put stuff out there well. We had to kind of put it out there ourselves, and it was the same with the Discord when we could.
Well, then we did find
video.
out though. Remember, because Discord does it anyway because they have a Reddit section that just posts every Reddit post to that
Sure,
server.
but it's different to the specific videos section or stream section.
Yeah.
But ultimately, using all those stuff, it set us up to actually exist in the YouTube sphere, right? Like,
yeah. What
to not
basically? What Tyler's saying is that we could coach you. No.
No, what we're saying is, if you are starting a YouTube channel, posting it to the relevant places who people would be interested in that kind of content is a good idea, and I don't think you should be ashamed to it. However, maybe call it after a little while.
Oh yeah, it went on too long.
Yeah.
For sure.
Like 2 and a bit years of posting to it, probably.
Yeah.
I think any good that is being done by it is negligible. As in, probably no one's clicking on it anymore, really.
No.
But anyway, that era is over. We are now self-reliance era, and we're thriving. Like, hell yeah.
Yeah, I think we've made like £5.
Yeah.
I don't know what's
in a week though.
Yeah, I know. It's like it's interesting. It's interesting. We'll see. We'll see. Whatever. Thank you. And it's also for obvious reasons. It's a weird time to have crossed that threshold. I'm not saying it'd be nice if it happened sooner for obvious reasons, but also for other obvious reasons, it would have been cool if this had somehow happened a while ago. At the same time, it's not like we won't be crossing over into a more lively era at some point. It's just, it's just right now. It's just honestly, if this had happened like 9 months from now, for example, it would have actually been made more sense.
It's like, it doesn't feel like Deep Rock is as dead as it could be, right? Like, it's not. I mean, it probably just going by the fact that the views are still there, really.
Yeah,
right?
I think I think it's that, and I think the majority of people who actually pay attention to the game are both aware of and at least neutral on Rocore. I think I think it's become a minority now of people who see Rocore as a detriment or just see Deep Rock as declining. I think we've sort of transitioned into a good spot. I think people understand the situation now, and it makes the whole thing feel more palatable. I reckon. Unfortunately, what we decided to talk about today is the opposite of palatable. Perhaps the least palatable time, perhaps, that Deep Rock experienced within the last couple of years. And I kind of probably should have done this at the beginning. I want to say a kind of a discretion warning, potentially, for if any developers happen to be watching. Not that I think the goal is not to be unconstructive, but I don't think we're necessarily going to go out of our way to be nice either. That's kind of the point.
We're going to be closer to venting than analysing what it did wrong, I would assume.
Yeah.
Right.
Although we kind of it's hard, Tyler. I feel like our venting is comparable to opinionated analysis almost. It's like it kind of borders on being analysis anyway. So the season 4 retrospective, it's something that we've kind of wanted to do for a while after season 5, right? When it felt a bit better to really shine a light on like what was probably the worst update for the game. I think that's probably the place to start, is a general reflection, really, on how bad it like really was. And when I reflect on it, on season 4 by itself as an update, yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. I haven't like actually come around to it, like I thought. Obviously, there was that thing we were kind of like right before it came out. We were probably more positive about it than we should have been. That's also a weird thing. For some reason, we were being defensive, and I think we've talked about this before. It's probably because we were very down on season 3 for some reason, and I think that made us basically made us feel like we had to see season 4 in a better light, when it probably didn't deserve it. So I can't imagine you think season 4 is better than we did. Maybe even worse. I don't know. It's
well, I think what it was
character
is like season 3 we hated because it was just like taking forever and we didn't know why, right? Like that was it. Like come like August time, we were screaming like, when is season 3 gonna get here? What are they doing? They got a thumb up their ass or something. And then like even when it came out, I think we were still pissed, right? It was still like, yeah, too little too late, ghost ship. Like we obviously still like the meteors, but the grenades was really the sore spot, right? In comparison to the guns, that was horrific. That they thought 1 grenade per class was significant enough, and it still wasn't.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, hold on, I stand by that, by the way. Obviously, there is a very important lesson that we learned pretty quickly. We were still more naive than we should have been at that point, but obviously, you come to just from a collective absorption of the things that they say. You understand that weapons in this game are such a absurd undertaking, and yet it's not surprising. Nothing can really compare. But 1 grenade was still not enough. I still kind of hold to that. I think 2 really would have been a sweet spot. Like I think 2 would have been a really 2 per class would have been a really respectable thing. That would have still been obviously less than the weapons, but not like small within its own right. It was still kind of not much even on its own. It was obviously much worse in comparison to the weapons, but even on its own, it's like only 1 per is not much, is it? Let's be honest.
And then not to mention, the rock box itself was also very underwhelming. Obviously, Meteor was cool, but other than the cleaning mini game, which is a hit or miss, you either like or dislike it, the rock box enemy pool is dismal, and that is a fact. Considering I still think that they went, that this part 2 was mainly due to like them knowing that the original stuff wasn't enough. They literally only had like enough time to make those 3. And then they went back and actually made it an enemy pool. And so season 3 was by no means perfect. Right?
No.
Some people still like it, and obviously it was a player peak, but we saw it as an ill omen onto the future, right? And then I guess at some point we got over it. We were like,
yeah, I'm not sure
cool.
when that would have been, because remember, obviously, season 4 took even longer. We need to point that out. And this actually is really going to be like a thing that is not necessarily a take, just an observation that is going to be quite ignorant of what we know now, right? Because we know, obviously, there is a debate about what was worth it and what wasn't. We know that was pretty much around the time. So the beginning of last year, the beginning of 2023 was basically when they were doing this stuff in like related to events. Or we know that it started just before season 3. Actually, we know because it started with Oktoberfest. When they first had that brought back Oktoberfest and had the first example of these double performance point encounters that became a staple of all of the events, and I think that work continued into the next year, like early on, and that's also when they were starting to form the concept of Rogue Core before it was a game. So we know season 4 was impacted by other things, but that makes it like worse in a vacuum, where it took 8.5 months, I think. It's like 7.5. I'm not sure. It took too long and just seemed to offer just nothing really compared to the amount of time it took either. It was a very strange thing to see, and that will be really enhanced when we get to like the first thing like actually in the basically the update notes. We're not going to be like doing patch notes for season 4, but we're still going to go through what was in it sequentially. And the first thing on that list really tells you one of the biggest problems with season 4 as an update and how it was constructed. But yeah, it was still a weird build-up as well. Because remember, you know, based on the teasers, we didn't even think it was going to be about... No one thought it was going to be about the Rockpox. People assumed it had been abandoned. We thought it was going to have something to do with surveillance. Remember that being a supposed theme? Surveillance.
Yeah. We were on juices then. We were clearly not in the same... I don't know. Well, it does... I still believe to this day that Ghost Ship purposefully didn't reveal Rockpox as long as they could. Yeah. Like, the Rockpox Part 2 was what people wanted to see the least. Yet, he still added it.
And it was the thing. It was arguably the bulk of the update as well. Almost. The thing is, it's such a mix mash of like kind of weird little new features season 4 is. It's kind of hard to say that the Rockpox was the main focus, but it still had the most things tied to it, I suppose. Although it's really only 2 things. It was just a bunch of new enemies, a bunch of new Rockpox enemies, and well, that's it, because Harold is also a new Rockpox enemy. But it was just a bunch of Rockpox stuff, and then just a bunch of other like bells and whistles, basically. But none of it really came together that well. And I think actually, yeah, I think I do want to actually start with like literally going through the content, because like I think the first thing is really paints the picture. If you look at I'm going off of the wiki, but it's basically the same as if you were to look at the Steam patch notes. But you get the first feature is new seasonal event, the Corruptor, right? Which was kind of a bad sign.
The big...
Yeah, so that's the main point. That's the main... The Corruptor Harold is literally the main feature of Season 4. And this really brought into question, like, what actually is the development criteria of a season aside from adding a performance pass and a cosmetic tree? Because that makes it seem like there isn't actually any internal requirement for them to add a new gameplay feature like a mission or a warning or a biome, right? When the season event is like supposed to be the main piece of content, it really just tells you something that things can't have been quite right at home when it comes to making season 4.
Was season 2 is like season 2. The Nemesis
the closest,
was like the main like front, right? Like it's the main, like, you know, all the Nemesis was as pushed as the Corruptor on, like, you know, the title art and like screen and stuff. Except season 2 had all the secondaries and still introduced a game mode, not a game mode, a warning.
I would say so.
Still had, right?
Well, you know, game modes is like a weird term with Deep Rock, isn't it? Because obviously with like missions, I kind of view all of that stuff as game modes in a way, like missions and warning stuff. But yeah, it still added the rival presence warning, which was a pretty substantial one. It wasn't pushed in the same way, but it was still kind of there. It was still the main piece of new gameplay, I suppose, in terms of...
I mean, it's only slightly inferior to the Rockpox like warning, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, like, in some ways, it's arguably better, depending on your view of things.
No way I'm looking at it, but like, yeah, there was no real big title feature, and the Corruptor, as much as it pretends to be it, is not it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was like maybe fine enough back. Like, when they added, like, the Corlock was probably, like, a big thing they pushed when they added that. But that was,
the
like,
Corlock was also added before Seasons, and therefore, basically, whatever the Corlock was when that update dropped is exactly what it is now, in terms of how often you encounter it. It basically had a set spawn frequency that was never going to change. Like, so, and that actually would work better as well, because the thing about, you know, Harold, he's a seasonal event, right? You could have easily had... And I mean this. I mean, okay, there's obviously a debate about how good is Harold really, and he's not great. But I would argue that if you just had another event in season 4, like that was the seasonal event, and Harold was just like new like boss encounter basically as like the main feature, like like Corlock style, Corlock and Betsy style, right? Where it's like, yeah, he's not like the most common thing in the world, but he's still like this big new random boss fight that will basically be as common as he is now forever, which wouldn't have been a good idea because that's not what seasons are really like. But I still think that would have made more sense, like to have the new big piece of content is this new boss, but there's still a seasonal event that actually would have been slightly better. Unfortunately, Harold kind of sucks, so it's actually appreciated that he's not around that much. And this is kind of another problem with season 4. At the same time, I think we're going to go on to probably discover most of the other things in season 4 are better than Harold, I think. But
I think that there needs to also be a. What are we saying is season 4? Season 4 launch or season 4 post November maintenance update? Because
launch. So what the update, what the season 4 update did, basically, is what we're sort of focusing on. In its
if
time.
we're talking about launch 4, very little good came from that. Like very little good. Like most of the things they added were pretty dog shit, right? Like people like complain en masse about how the Rockpox is bullshit. And for clarification, it always had been, but there was just never enough Rockpox enemies for people to notice. So then, obviously, the maintenance update improved that drastically. The Corruptor sucks and sucked, and they tried fixing it in the maintenance update. I mean, it improved it slightly, but I mean, there's only so much you can do.
Well, I mean, the Corruptor, it just circles back around to it basically not being optional, doesn't it? As to why it's bad. Like, it really just comes down to that. Obviously, that's not very
because it's a bad boss.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying that's the. It's not nice to say this, but it would be better if we could just ignore it, right? That's what I'm saying. So the fact that it's basically you have to do it, or at least you have to engage with it in some level, like even if it's just cleaning what it leaves behind. I mean, the chance, like, what are you gonna? You're not just gonna do that. You're gonna actually kill it, and there's no other event that's actually like that. The fact that you are basically forced to do it is really the main problem. Because if we could just ignore it, then people wouldn't talk about it. It wouldn't stop it from being a bad fight, but it would stop it from being impacting people's experience.
That mindset is the result of some of the worst features in the game. Like, you can just ignore it. Is why we still have patrol, like prospector data deposit, or I don't know, some of the worst warnings, like horror, whatever that fucking cave is.
Yeah, haunted caves. Yeah.
Well, and obviously, it then also results in some of the things that are actually genuinely terrible. People are just saying, please let me just not do it instead of improve it. Like the Corruptor, like escort duty and industrial sabotage. Industrial sabotage being a bit different because if it was optional, it would suit how it was literally made better, but we'll ignore that. But the point is that season 4...
Check the previous videos for elaboration.
Yeah, so fucking low. And on launch, basically every piece of content it added was terrible.
Well, I want to point out, by the way, so we only found out that there's going to be Rockpox at all in season 4 from the key art, actually, when we saw the key art. I think only as well when it was fully revealed. I mean, actually, I think there was a Rockpox Goo Bomber in the obscured version. So I think that's when we found out. But even still, it was right up until the trailer, like narrated trailer, we assumed there was a major piece of content lying in here. We were like, oh, there must be something. It might be a mission type or something like that. Like, and that would involve this boss enemy as well, and things like that. And maybe Jet Boots would be part of it. So actually, we called Jet Boots being part of a mission.
Yeah, we thought Corruptor would be.
We thought there must be something, That's what it was coming down to. Like, there must be something that they're not, like, because there will be. It wasn't even like there must be. It's just like there is, like, the main piece of content is just not being stated yet because it kind of can't be. The only way it could be is if they put out another roadmap for some. But it's like literally only a week out from release, so there's no point doing that. Just wait for the trailer and then they can tell us about what the main content is. Come to find out, we already knew. It was just right there on the poster. It's just like. It was just him.
There was no main content. you were deceived.
Y'all got any
And so,
content?
yeah, I mean,
Nah, we got abysmal dog shit. That's season 4. If you're talking to season 4, so nah.
don't talk to people. But yeah, I mean, the corruptor. The thing is, he's not even the worst part, right? I mean, we got called Harold. That was fun. Like,
Yeah, there's a bit of unity
like,
there, and everyone was unified in calling this thing Harold.
and the events aren't the end of the world, really, right? Like, kind of harmless in their own way. Like, you can always quit the cave, like some shit like that, right? But
I wouldn't say that's harmless when you're encouraged
no,
to abort a mission. I think that's actually quite impactful on the experience.
yeah, but I don't know. He wasn't the worst part, even though he was terrible.
Yeah, I think I think that's interesting because I'm actually not sure what is worse than Harold. Do you sort of mean like in other ways? There are things that are worse than Harold, but not in the same way. Because you might.
Yeah.
Are you thinking of? Are you thinking of a drink?
I could be thinking of a drink. I could be thinking of a certain scorpion type enemy.
Well, that's different, isn't it? Well, that's okay. So,
Really.
next is actually the Rockbox enemies. So, and this was a surprise, especially because they only really pushed in the trailer. They only pushed the Goo Bomber and the Breeder. They actually didn't point out that they added Rockbox acid spitters and exploders. And I only saw them in the trailer. They didn't mention them, but they were in the trailer. I was like you know, like Leonardo DiCaprio in that movie. So they are.
Yeah.
So it's actually cool to find they'd actually filled out the roster for these enemies like well enough, like because they did actually. The Rockpox as a sort of its own little species is quite well fleshed out now. And was by season 4.
Each one
which I don't hate.
individually
I
is
don't
not
hate it. In fact, yeah, okay, yeah, it's not actually
like,
that bad.
like it's still just an acid spitter of the rock boxes, an exploder the rock boxes, a goo bomber which is slightly worse somehow, or like not slightly worse, significantly worse than your regular goo bomber, because of the way Rockbox works. And then they introduced the new rarest fucking enemy in the game,
the Breeder. Okay, so I actually really want to talk about the Breeder. I really want to talk about the Rockbox Breeder. So the Rockbox Breeder is, first of all, I would say it's the most unique one as well, because it's like it is this introduction of a mobile spawner for the Rockbox larvae. And it also has a cool effect of basically Hindenburging when you kill it, right? Which I haven't seen in fucking ages, right? It's actually pretty cool that when you kill it, it does like basically crash land and explode into a bunch of larvae. And it's actually pretty cool. It's actually a pretty cool death animation as well. Tyler, this might shock you. I have seen, and I'm someone who doesn't avoid. I actually didn't turn off season 4 that much when we got the season toggle. I actually had it on most of the time. Actually, do you want to guess how many? This is literally in total. How many Rockbox breeders I've seen? It's been a year and 2 months. How many do you think I've seen? Killed.
6.
Yes, it's 6. You're actually right. You're actually. But it's less than 10. It's less. Me.
You play like
me.
nightly.
Less than 10 Rockbox breeders. That is the rarest enemy in the game. Objectively, that is. And obviously, it was always a very simple case as well, where it's just like, if you're on a lift phage outbreak mission, there should not be a normal breeder. It was a very simple solution for us, right? And yet you would see them. You would sometimes see more than one, and not a single Rockbox one. It's like, oh, okay. That's poor implementation, and I'm willing to shit on that decision. They weren't correctly implemented. They're actually a very cool enemy and like a variant of breeders. I would like to see them replace breeders occasionally. Anyway, even outside of the warning.
If anything, it does seem like that was what they put the most effort into of the new Rockbox bunch, other than Corruptor, of course.
Yeah.
And then they proceed to forget to add it to most, if not all, missions. All right, cool. Smart move, go ship.
And obviously that's exemplified, of course, by the fact that breeders don't spawn as part of swarms, because one of the actual things I liked that season 4 did as far as like smaller changes, it added the rockpox swarms as part of the normal pool. So while season 4 was going on, you could get rockpox swarms on a non-lithophage outbreak mission. Unfortunately, that is of course limited to mining expedition and on-site refining, and now deep scan. But also, you have to have season 4 active now to have that happen, though, if you're not on a lithophage outbreak mission. But of course, breeders aren't part of swarms, so that made them even rarer. So there was just no chance. They just had to be there. So I genuinely consider that a fumble. I think the addition of the rockpox enemies, the new ones, was actually like fine. It's actually one of the slightly better parts of season 4.
I think
but they fumbled the breeder because it's great, but you just never fucking see it. You just never fucking.
Like I said it even before going into season 4, before we even knew we were getting them. Like the rockpox needs more enemies to even be considered a faction. Like if they left Rockpox as they were, season 3, just 3 enemies, a Praetorian, a Grunt, and the little Parasite, like that's the worst thing ever. It was a complete waste of time and energy adding it. So they had to add more. But preferably they would have done it then instead of later. But yeah. And yeah, they're fine generally. It is funny, even though it is bad, how rare the Googomber is. Not Googomber. The other guy, Breeder, is.
Yeah.
They both lie. They're the same.
They're the same. They're the same. Well, it's interesting because I think they are fine and actually kind of good in the context of getting more rockpox, but unfortunately, no one really wanted more rockpox, so that in itself was bad.
People were pretty neutral to rockpox. I think they didn't like them, but they were like, the rockpox is fine. But then they added all these new enemies, and say what you will about the enemies, they exposed how fucked the rockpox is, the status effect, and how you get it, which was purely due to their half-assed drill patch bullshit that they pulled. I will not let this rest. They were like, oh, the Jules Destroyer against Rockpox. Let's just, like, if you are within any radius of any bubble, like Rockpox bursting, or like, not in any radius, within like a 7-meter radius or some bullshit like that, I think it is.
Oh, well, hold on, okay. They can't have been 7. That's really big. It would have been smaller than that, I'm sure.
But like within like close radius.
So hold on. I'm just going to say 7 meters is 2 meters bigger than you can even potentially make a fat boy shot. So
okay,
it's smaller than that. It's smaller than 7 meters. I'm just saying, just for sure.
But like basically, within close radius, which is not hard to accomplish in a cave, basically. If a rockpox tumor pops in any way, you will get 70% infected.
Yeah,
that's where I got the 7 from. I realise now.
I find it funny as well. It's not like they did anything to make certain weapons less overpowered against rockpox, like the breach cutter or the wave cooker, or
just drills.
Yeah, just drills.
Which considering like his all his other weapons aren't great against rockpox. It's like the wave cooker is probably the best thing.
Well, the wave cooker was really good because it's just like it can hit multiple at once for like, and it just instantly pops them as well for very little ammo. It was really strong. Yeah. But obviously the breach cutter was the king as well. It was stupid. It still is, obviously. But you can literally I mean, it tells you there's something wrong with the breach cutter. You could literally spawn, and this does border on triviality because it's like, yeah, it doesn't really matter how many, but you could literally spawn an infinite number. You could spawn literally a billion Rockpox Praetorians in one spot, and the breach cutter could kill them all with one shot. And I know that's trivial because you would never see a billion of them at once, a billion of anything, but it's still true. Like, it would just do it, and it was like kind of gross. It feels amazing. I had some experience with that on one of the videos. When I was doing the Smart Trigger one, I paired it with Breach Cutter, fought some Rockpox, and it just cleaved through them, and it felt pretty good. I've never been allowed to believe that the Rockpox was bad. I don't know. I just wanted to say something. The last thing I wanted to say about the Rockbox enemies was I am still. This hasn't changed. I'm not a Rockbox hater, actually, and I wouldn't.
Yeah, because they've fixed them.
No.
Right.
I even preferred the Rockbox to season 3, just during season 4. I still thought they were slightly better. Just it was just more interesting to face a contagion spike in sort of a casual context. Just like it's slightly more interesting. Obviously, Harold kind of made things worse. But yeah, that really just comes around to whether or not they should have done Rockbox. And I guess, in some ways, you say, and obviously I very much so agree, as a faction, as a species, they were not fleshed out enough. Does that mean season 4 should have been about them, though? It's like I think that is a difficult question, genuinely, because I would have chosen, I would have chosen them to do something else, but the Rockbox still needed it. It's like, how do you work with that?
It definitely is a very distinct symptom of needing a theme. Like that's not like it is like we can't just add Rockbox like casually because we need to bolster the ranks. If we want to add Rockbox, we have to justify it, right, as being part of the theme. Like back in the day, like before seasons and that, they would have just added it and said because they needed more variations, and that would have just been part of the update, right? They would have needed to have forced it to be a bigger thing than it was. Probably wouldn't have forced a corruptor really.
Yeah, honestly, like you can imagine, I can imagine the contagion spike as a machine event, right? Well, like how it's like Twitter deposit, basically. You find a contagion spike with like an infuser, like core infuse near it, and you put it in, and then it cools down, or when you actually start the event, it cools down the cleaning pod, like it does for the bomb dispenser, and it would be like that, and you would get like these infected enemies that attack you while you do it. Like they could have, I can see that happening before, or in a non-season timeline, basically. And I think and this is actually where I want to introduce where we would be more constructive is comparing season 4 to other things, mainly season 5, right? Season 5, which is very much so not anchored to a theme. It's just not. It just isn't. Like it has, it technically introduces these new seasonal enemies, but that event is extremely self-contained, and that's not even really the theme. The theme of season 5 is technically a prelude to Road Core, but it's also at the same time its theme is also the one that we've been asking for forever, which is like just make a theme that is based around the company wanting to do more stuff, and that just it just took off all of the requirements basically. Basically just unleashed them. And yet season 4 feels completely leashed by Rockbox, because it's just like, oh, we need a theme. And then that ends up being where most of the effort goes, is into the themed content. That's a big problem with season 4. The Corruptor and the new Rockbox enemies are clearly a pretty, like, probably close to 50% of the work just by themselves. And they are obviously temporary in their they're temporary in being pronounced parts of the game, right? They will fall into obscurity once the season is over, and they did. People don't really interact with it anymore. You barely see Corruptors, and even when you do, no one's really happy about it. So it's like, that is the part of season 4 that's not so great. Every other season at least had the meat to have things that would carry over after the season ended.
And then once again, if you want to compare it to season 5, is season 5 the Cornerstone event?
It's the only thing that's going to like fall away from like being in the like on the being in the limelight. Basically everything else is in the exact state it's going to be in when season 5 ends in 2 years. I think that's a good thing to highlight about season 4, and it's interesting because I don't think they're going to make these mistakes again. I don't, but I think it's still worth reflecting on to sort of see, I guess, almost entertain a darker timeline, which I think with what we would have gotten, actually, I don't think things would have. I think seasons would have been more similar than you would like to season 4 if they happened to carry on in the same way, without some extraneous thing to draw away Ghost Ship's like energy, basically.
Do you think it is like worth like saying about how the reception to season 4 is ultimately what we can thank for season 5. That like the people's reaction to season 4 and how genuinely open people were with how saying that it was shit, dog shit, and that they should feel bad for making it, like stuff like that. Like no, but it was the reception, right? If because that's the problem. It was steering towards this during season 3. That's what we were. That's what we were saying.
Yeah.
Right? That like the content felt like the seasonal content felt a bit off, a bit forced. They're starting to like with the guns gone. They seem to not know what to do with the rest of the resources, and there was like the grenades that weren't significant and stuff like that. And then it only got worse going to season 4.
Yeah.
And I think it took
and
people being like, hey, go ship.
Yeah, and we were coping too, right? Do you remember when? Do you remember when we watched Axis Cronus' video?
Yeah.
Shitting on season 4, and he was like, "Where is the new equipment?" And we were like, "It's randomizer."
Yeah, or jetty boots.
Or jetty boots. And it's like, oh no, oh no. So I'm glad, but obviously that kind of did fall away after we actually got it. You know, that was pre.
It was realizing that jetty boots. Just saying like an example, like jetty boots. It wasn't content. Like we played it for the usual amount, normally like 3, 4, 5 hours maybe. That afternoon, didn't get it once, did we? Jetty boots. I think we found one corruptor, and we didn't find any jetty boots.
Oh, like you're talking about the recent one, actually, the recent stream we did.
No. I was talking about that stream, the stream where we got season 4.
Oh.
We didn't find either of the 2 big main things.
Yeah.
And we gave Randomizer a try for like the 1 of 5 times we've ever done it, and it was bugged because Randomizer didn't work on launch, and it probably still barely does.
Yeah.
Like, and ultimately, people called Ghost Ship on it, on the misguided direction that they were going in. And I think luckily,
is your door still open? Is your door open right now?
A little bit, yeah. Because I can't really do it that much because I've got a bunch of hangers on top.
Okay.
And a cat.
I don't think it's too bad. I should probably not point it out too much. But yeah, I think the response is important to talk about because it was definitely earned. And look, I'm going to be honest, I feel kind of vindicated that season 4 had a negative response in that we saw where it was going, you know, with season 3, and that we were actually right. And it feels bad. This is why I don't like this era. I think there is a genuine that you could really point to. Honestly, from season 3 up to when the November update came out, up to that, was a bad time. And it doesn't feel good that we were right that things were getting worse, because they did get worse when season 4 came out. And that's not... I wish we were wrong, but we weren't. And we kind of thought we were wrong because we were like, oh, season 4's actually not that bad. And then obviously... But yeah, the community was actually correct. And I think the next thing is the 2. Yeah, it's the 2 new... The guys, right? You mentioned him earlier. The Stingtail and the Septic Spreader. So these were actually the only things we kind of knew about from the roadmap. They actually mentioned the jetpacks were mentioned. Obviously, come to Jetty Boots. But they're like new enemies was mentioned, and obviously you could lump in the Rockbox guys with that, and I think you probably should to make a point. It's like it's kind of weird that
I think it was very, very specific that it was non-factional enemies, like in the normal pool of swarms. That was the appeal towards them. Which, you know, let's not kill ourselves. That's a good idea.
Yes, it was, and we also
that was not misguided. That was a shout.
It was, and that's actually a really important thing to point out, because obviously we talk about season 4. I think the new enemies, as far as decision making goes, are the best thing as far as it deciding what should be in the update, right? You know, everything else is either just too much focus on seasonal content or too much focus on very small, sort of misguided elements that don't really fit in. Just new generic enemies was a solid idea. And honestly, I think there was a moment where we pointed out new enemies. That's actually the new mainstay edition. That's actually, I think we tried to make that point. We tried to say that's actually the new weapons or grenades, because the other seasons hadn't brought generic enemies, and this one did. And it was like, oh, so that's actually what we should be focusing on. And I don't think that's actually entirely wrong. The problem really comes when you actually get them, the enemies, unfortunately.
Once again, it's the launch versus November update. But one of them is barely affected by them. I think I'll talk about, because it's less controversial. We'll get him out of the way. The septic spreader was fine, and then they made a slight improvement to like dealing with it in the November update by being able to shoot down the projectile.
The septic spreader. No, it's actually. I think it should be quite easy to do personally, because I think that would really alleviate. Because the septic spreader, I like the septic spreader. It's a cunt in some cases, right? It's really, they can be real pieces of shit on salvage op and escort duty, but mainly, by the way, on the stages of those missions, escort duty just being the whole thing, but on the stages of those missions that aren't, in my opinion, aren't particularly great anyway. Like obviously, talked about that last week, right? Escort duty, bad. Yeah. That part of salvage op, the finale part of salvage op, is a pretty bad part of that mission. Yeah. So I don't think I don't think they would use it as evidence to bring the septic spreader. I think the septic spreader should exist. I like there being a mortar enemy. They literally can hide and spew and hit you from behind cover. I think that's really cool, and they look cool and they feel good to kill as well. I like them.
Yeah. I think there is also something. I think a comment said this, and we might get to the comments by the end, and a comment on the post. But it is something I think is a really, really good insight, in that like someone started playing. One of the commenters started playing during season 4, and therefore they got used to the septic spreader being there, and obviously everything else. That was the point. But I'm going to use it for the septic spreader. The same way we got used to spitball infectors. Right, where it's like they're a piece of shit, but they're just part of the game.
Yeah,
you've just got to learn to deal with it.
Because the game,
it's like we, have new things. It's like, oh, this new thing they added is terrible, but it is probably identical in pain in the arseness as like acid splitters or like other like menaces, for example, right?
And I don't like to give Patrician TV credit, but I'm going to have to, because he made a point in his Morrowind video, which by the way, I like his videos, his big fucking Elder Scrolls video essays, but he made a point in the Morrowind video about durability and about like people calling out durability and not liking it as a mechanic, right? And because it's like an inconvenience, and he talked about how that opens a nasty can of worms about the fact that games are kind of just gameplay templates with a bunch of inconveniences thrown on top of them to create the challenge. Like pretty much everything you face in a game is a piece of shit. The only reason that we have that distinction in Deep Rock is because we have grunts and other enemies. If there were no grunts, you wouldn't think about the other enemies in this way. But because we have grunts, you have these basically hundreds of buttery smooth enemies that you can just run through, no matter what you're using. And everything else on top of that is its own unique form of inconvenience to that fun, basically, that you have to deal with so you can enjoy running through hordes of grunts, basically. Every enemy is that. Even guards are that. Even swarmers are that. Every single enemy apart from grunts is a disruptive creature in some way.
But if you were in a game mode and it was just hundreds and thousands of grunts, I mean, well, sure, right now, gutturally, fun as hell.
Well, no, I want that warning still. I want Gruntpocalypse, okay? I'm just saying, I want that.
Sure, but that's just a lot more grunts with the other stuff still. If the only thing in the game were hundreds of grunts, like just constantly, just tons and tons of grunts, that shit would be terrible, right? Yeah. Like, you can't just have, like, I don't know, bread. You got to put some toppings on it. I mean, you can have bread. Bread's actually quite nice.
Yeah, I think that's why. I think that's why Darktide didn't actually grab me, because Darktide, apart from like the bosses, basically just felt like constant hordes of like paper mache people that you could just
I think in Grammy, I think it sucked.
Yeah.
I just didn't like.
I thought the music was pretty cool. I think you should listen to that. That soundtrack's interesting as hell. But
And obviously I did one good fella. The point is that I think like the septic spreader like feels worse than it is if you've been playing beforehand, because he's a problem you never got used to dealing with. But ultimately, it is just as valid and like kind of well made as basically everything else we've had before, and have had since. I think the barrage infector is probably about the same level of being a right fucking pain in the ass that I hate to the sun and back, but ultimately you can probably justify its existence the same as everything beforehand. But the stingtail might not fall under that.
I've never. I'm going to be honest. I haven't. When it comes to individual features in a game, obviously you get like pretty intense reactions to certain things, like on a broader scale. Like for example, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, just what it was, people hated, and you got the reaction. But the stingtail was an individual enemy, like a relatively small part in the grand scheme of things in the game. I've never seen a reaction like that to something of that scale in a game. Something that's just a single enemy of that, that level. I've never seen a reaction like that. Genuinely, I think about it. It was actually it was intense. It actually was.
It's like, hey, what's going on, guys? And the entire hundreds of thousands of people like, fuck you, you fucking piece of shit.
It was genuinely one of the most really a really volatile time was when the stingtail was the public enemy number one, basically. It was really volatile, and there was a lot of very, very damning conversation about that enemy.
Load into get a stingtail and then just start recording, because they know for a fact that they're like about to get throttled by it, and they're gonna post that to whatever they can later and scream about it.
Yes.
Because in fairness, they weren't that bad, because they made it out to be like this is like Hitler, and the stingtail was like multiple levels higher than Hitler. Like people were complaining more about the stingtail than they are Hitler.
In fact,
right?
if you actually read Mein Kampf, you actually find mention of the stingtail as his inspiration.
Yeah, yeah. He wanted to be as kill as many people as the stingtail does. Oh my
god. Yeah, that's horrible. I'm sorry about that. That's probably bad. That's probably in bad taste, actually.
The point is that it's not that bad. It's not worse than Hitler. But it's not much better than Hitler.
It was Deep Rock's
really.
Hitler.
Yeah. But then they nerfed it. In all of the worst ways you could go about nerfing something.
So no. So I want to talk about the stingtail nerfs, because I personally think it's still not great, but I think it's a surprisingly decent example of where nerfing something into the ground wasn't the worst way to go, because I think mechanically the stingtail, people only thought it was a bad idea because of how they were too strong, basically. The actual concept of the stingtail doing what it does is actually a pretty good idea, and something to learn. And I think people need to remember you can interrupt its attack. That's actually very important to know. It was just too tanky. Like, you can't deny. Obviously, you can argue that nerfing to the ground is a lazy route to take. It doesn't mean it was still too strong. The fact that it was like the same endurance as a Praetorian was stupid, when it came out.
There were definitely changes, but I think ultimately, if I can recall correctly, and you probably would better than I, they just made it into the most frail thing you can imagine. Right?
But it's not.
That's basically
it's not that frail though. It's really not.
No, but I mean, they made it. They changed it around, didn't they? With like player values, right? Like it gets a bit tankier when there's more players involved.
Hold on.
No, what?
No. It might be. Okay, I need to check this because it might be the opposite of that.
I think it might. point is that it was supposed to like 1v1 people or some bullshit like that, right?
Yeah.
Like it was quite unique in that way. But like the point is that
Yeah, hold on. Actually, look, I want to actually put this. I want to see if I can put this in the video, in some way that makes sense. So if you look at this, this is the Stingtail's health scaling basically, and you can see on the left player count 1 to 4. It's just one row. Basically, as opposed to this, so player count separate rows for the amount of players because for like how much damage it does, but health is just one row. So the only thing that changes its health is difficulty, basically. So, yeah, it was the opposite of what you said. I thought it might have been. I thought it when you said that because I knew they did something like that. And that was
yeah. So they like actively changed the way the game normally works to make it more vulnerable against like more people.
What that means though is that the Stingtail is an enemy that actually rewards dogpiling.
Yeah,
which I don't think is a horrible concept necessarily.
No, but
it means if the team is unified in it, then they can just put it down if they want to, as long as the team is on board, which you would be.
Yeah. I don't know. They basically with the spreader, the only slight thing they did to nerf it, for example, I really don't even think it was barely a nerf. Right, they just added the feature that you can shoot down a shot.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the only change they made to it as well.
Yeah, it's like technically that's a nerf because now it's like, it's more just now it's not an unstoppable force once it's been fired. You can do something about it. Like if you are in a mini mill mission, sitting there in your little radius, and you see an orb of death start flying over towards you. If you hit it in time, you're not going to be completely screwed. But with the Stingtail, it's like they just made it so you kill it quicker. But that's it. And I think they slowed it down slightly, the speed that it grabs. It didn't make it any more interesting to like counter or anything. Like they just needed to kill, which I don't think they shouldn't have. Like they should have done that in one regard. But I remember specifically saying that like, instead of just like people wanted it to be nerfed and then gave a bunch of suggestions on how it could be nerfed, and instead of picking one or two, they just did them all. I remember thinking that and being like how it got nerfed. Like they just
instead of everything, instead of doing what would have been the best option, which was like save all the effort you would take from just tweaking stats and pour it into actually making it mechanically interesting. Because look, Deep Rock does this sometimes, but not enough, which is the idea of destroying certain parts of an enemy, like removes attacks and things like that, and hinders them.
Yeah.
There's not really much of that. I think the only thing that is the Omen actually. What?
Boom Bomber. If you pop both of its balls,
I always forget about that because it's usually dead after you do that. But yeah, the Goo Bomb and the Omen. It's not many examples, but the Stingtail was ripe for it. The tail was such. It's got a tail. Glyphids don't have tails.
Yeah,
it's got a tail.
It's not even. It doesn't even have to be like shoot the tail to cut it off or whatever. It just has to be like when it's about to charge, its tail starts glowing above its head, and then it like shoots it at you. If you could shoot the tail in that time, it should just retract back because it's like, oh, my tail had. Like it's as simple as that. You should have been able to like shoot the tail to stop him from grabbing you, instead of having to basically sit there staring at the thing about to attack you, try and dodge, but unless you know isn't it like you have to kind of bait it into thinking that you're running left and then stop just as it's like already shot its shot.
Yeah, so you actually have to be moving the way you're supposed to dodge it. You have to be moving one direction and then change at the last. I think it's not actually that complicated. I think you just move one direction and change at the last second because it keeps aiming until it literally keeps aiming until it actually does the attack. Which is, in my opinion, it's not really how these things should work. I think both the Stingtail and the Trijaw are culprits here, where they continue to charge their attack. Well, they continue to aim while charging their attack. The Trijaw should be locked into the direction that it's aiming once it starts to do the attack, but it can aim right up to the point where it actually shoots. And Stingtail can do the same with its grab attack, and I think that is not quite Right.
And
So
I think maybe if you
it makes it really hard to intuitively dodge those attacks in a swarm setting. It's like I can't.
yeah, because it's split surrounded by other stuff, right? Like
Yeah,
more
doesn't
just
work.
like the Stingtail should only really ever get away with grabbing you if you didn't know it was there. I think is like the argument, right? Like so, like if you knew where the Stingtail was and you were able to reflectively see it and shoot its tail, it should stop the grab attack, right? Like you shouldn't have to kill it to stop the grab attack, really. And instead they just made it super killable. And it's like, yeah, it works, right? Nobody's complaining about the Stingtail anymore. But like nobody's talking about the Stingtail anymore.
Yeah, well, they don't need to. I mean, it's fine. You know, it still does what it does. It's still a destructive enemy. I still want to put them down whenever they are present. And I just think it caused so much, I think, vitriol as to like, or just extreme opinions about its mechanical implementation or like the idea behind its unique mechanic, which I actually think I like it. I like that it's an enemy that can basically take advantage of the environment in a way where it's like in the right situation it can one shot you from full damage. I don't hate that for some reason.
Let's just for a moment now. It's not the first enemy that can do that, right? The grabber that everyone loves can do that.
Yeah, the grabber, which by the way, I don't like Mactera grabbers because I think they're kind of silly. I think you should be able to break free from that hold, for example.
Yeah. Fuck.
Yes, I just mean like you should be able to like it's a pretty normal thing, with the kind of thing where you move the left stick back and forth or something, that kind of thing. That's like a lot of games have that kind of thing, but you have to free yourself from some kind of trap. And grabber's just like, no, you get grabbed, you're going to be taken somewhere. Don't know where.
Yeah.
But I've drunk a lot of water throughout this. Jesus Christ.
Oh no. I don't know.
Gonna drink an ocean.
Yeah. It's not ultimately. It's not like Rockbox's nightmare anymore because it's not. They nerfed it into oblivion. But like, I don't know. There was more potential in the Rockbox than what it has lived up to at this point.
Well, is there though? Because what is the potential other than just adding more, basically just versions of pre-existing enemies that just infect you, and that's really it. I don't know if there was that much potential.
What do you mean? I'm just saying that the Stingtail could be better.
Oh, you said Rockpox. You said there's more potential in the Rockpox.
Then I didn't mean that.
No. Okay.
Considering we were talking about Stingtail. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's it for the enemies.
Yeah, well, we get the next things are like the last two features actually, which honestly I forgot. I forgot actually there was this little. Earlier I mentioned season 4 is kind of like a cheese board of slightly like pretty undeveloped concepts, but it's not. It's like flesh out the Rockpox, two quite mixed generic enemies, and then two weird other features. So I might as well just say them both at the same time. Got Jetty Boots and Randomizer. Jetty Boots are still strange to me because they are still an anomaly, and I think they actually do pin down one of the things that I thought was just so strange about season 4. It's an addition that is just weirdly singular. It's nothing. It is something, but it's nothing in regards to what the game already had. It's just this completely random thing. It's technically an entirely new system, but it's not because it's just one thing.
It's something that really cool, taps onto something that like was already full enough on its own, right? Like if like the thing itself was like full enough to where it's like basically like most of the additions, like the warnings and like anomalies this season, right? It's like we didn't need this, but thanks. Like if it was like that, but like season 4 needed more than a Jetty Boots, which is just like a thing that's there. Sometimes, rarely, when it feels like it, which is just like what you meant to do with that. Nothing. You can't do anything with it like voluntarily.
Yeah, and they are kind of just what they really come down to is just being like a kind of nice unannounced anomaly, but that you might also not encounter until the end of the mission, which just puts them in a weird spot. Basically, it's like whether or not they're good, because they are good, in a way, but they don't feel like a great part of the game. They don't really feel like a part of the game, basically, which kind of does them a disservice. And I think it was probably they probably didn't think about it in this way, but I think completely ignoring. I think there was potential there. I think the fact that they didn't see Jetty Boots as what it should have been, what it should have been is actually a power up box that I genuinely wanted to be expanded upon. Right. You can put more things in that box that it could randomize to. I still want that, by the way. That actually could have become something. And I think it's also held back by being just Jetty Boots, even from the get-go. But it just feels so... it feels so anomalous for something that's not actually an anomaly. It's like, just weird. It's just weird. Even though they're not bad. And that's actually kind of the same as Randomizer anyway, isn't it? But maybe one could say, I don't know, maybe one would argue Randomizer is bad. I don't know, because definitely waste of time.
Anyone who has used Randomizer in this year, raise their hand.
Have I?
Honestly, Harry, I think technically we did actually use Randomizer on like a stream vaguely recently. But I'm also saying the audience, because realistically, like, the hide and seek drink got more use and gets more use than Randomizer does. Right?
Yeah.
That's just a fact. Like,
yeah.
Like, it's just like the faction of people that love or need randomized builds is so infinitesimally small, right? Like, it's probably like, I don't know, a couple hundred people that randomizer game is where it's at for them. Going into a mission with completely random stuff that they have no control over. But that is where the fun resides. I've not heard of anyone who thinks. Most people like making a build they like, and then like using the build that they like.
Yes.
And then make a dwarf that they like looking at, and then like using the build with the like of the dwarf that they like, like. The point being, I don't want a random fucking build with a. I don't like Snowball with a cryo cannon that's also built for damage because I didn't get to pick it, and then a Sabata with stun and no ammo. Like,
yeah, it's like
I didn't no one would pick it.
Like, that's
This is a terrible build.
That's not fun, and it's not fun on lower difficulties either, because well, why would it be? I don't know. I can't imagine a good reason why it would be fun on lower difficulties. Not that I would use it, but on higher difficulties, it's so immediately. It tells you that it actually reveals that Deep Rock is not built for random loadouts. It doesn't actually jive with how people play the game, because pretty much every build, especially good builds, strong builds that you rely on for like Hazard 5 and things like that, are so specific, and it's very easy for a build to just not work. And Randomizer really exposes that, and that's why it just kind of doesn't work. And we never really got like a clear reasoning from Ghost Ship themselves, but I think it was always assumed that this is the kind of thing that is meant for veterans, I guess, people who have everything and people who want some kind of
I think
fresher experience.
In this update, they also added random builds to the thing. Right? That's what they added the ability to randomize your loadout, but properly in a way that you can see it. Adjust it if need be. But I guess because they then also had randomized, dwarf drip, they basically just mixed both of those things together and put it in a mug, which isn't the worst thing. I think it's using stuff to create new stuff, which is smart and good. But it's a weird thing where it's like, who is this for? Like, is this supposed to be a challenge? Because it is a challenge, but not a fun one, right? The challenge is like using the build that you like using in a very difficult mission.
Or maybe the challenge is,
you...
Tyler, maybe a better challenge is taking the builds that you have already mastered Hazard 5 with, the builds that you can dominate Hazard 5 with, and being given the opportunity instead to not handicap yourself in terms of your build, but rather to actually push the difficulty further.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I just want to give Hazard 5 Plus a shout out, basically. That's what I'm trying to do. Because it's great. And I think it fulfills one of the presumed roles of Randomizer very well, which is like just creating a fresher experience for people who have done everything and mastered the game. It's far more interesting to basically have a new realm of difficulty opened up for the builds that you already know, rather than to gain new difficulty through having your builds just taken away from you. You know, it's far more interesting to have what you can do be shaken up by the game rather than what you have being shaken up. It's weird, but I just don't think Randomizer, it just didn't pan out. Basically, it didn't pan out. Which, you know, you can call it inoffensive, and I suppose in a lot of ways it technically is, but you know, it still comes off as wasted effort, unfortunately. So I can't call it a positive. I think Jetty Boots is much more. I'm much more okay with Jetty Boots than I am with Randomizer.
Like too bad, but it then was like the most bugged thing, right, on launch. Like
yeah, it was just bugged as hell, and it's just like it doesn't feel good, does it?
Yeah, like you drink it and it's like you go into the mission and it's like, oh, I have I think the example I remember doing, I had the Hurricane and it had like the new mindlet ones, well, not the ones that like go the ones that follow you quicker and smaller and don't dissipate on hit.
What are we talking about?
The fucking overclock on Gunner's Hurricane, where
they follow you.
No, they follow the fucking thing. The ones that don't go.
Plasma bursters.
Yeah. It said I had that. Didn't have that.
No.
Did not have that. I had something that was not that.
Something else.
It's just like, okay. Sure. Whatever. And yeah. So it was weird. And stupid. And they spent probably way more effort than was needed trying to fix it.
Yeah. So we should talk about the Jetty Boot arcade machine. We have to, because that thing's it's the thing that somehow managed to take up 2 teasers by itself. Do you remember?
2, I think like 3.
Yeah, I mean maybe it's 3. I don't know, but it was still not bad. I like that thing. It's a nice thing to have in a space rig, and I don't think that it, on its own was wasted effort. I just want to say that.
Once again, it's like the Jetty Boots and that machine as a whole really feels like it needs to be elaborated upon. More machines, please. More mini games for more power ups, please. Or is this just a weird outline system that we'll get nothing to? Like many others, really.
Many others.
Perks, daily specials.
Daily special bit, yeah, okay, yeah. All right. That's a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
We got the ability to copy and paste loadouts.
Yep, never used it.
It's fine though. That's fine. That's fine. That one's fine. We can actually ignore that because I'd rather talk about sleeveless armors, which was a nice. It was a nice can of worms to open, but it also opened a can of worms. It was a really nice customization feature. That it didn't shoot itself in the foot, but it gave a really bad impression when it was just basically the DLCs. They just chose for it to not be a thing for the DLC armors completely and utterly and permanently. So it's not like the new one, for example, has it built into it. It was just chosen to not do. And I really like the sleeveless armor feature because it's good. but I do not appreciate that decision. I do not. I don't appreciate it, and I think that held back something that could have been like a real highlight of season 4 if it was as broad as it should have been, covering all the armor. Because I don't know how you can justify that. Do you know what I mean? How you can justify removing this feature on the armor that people pay for? I don't really see how that is fair. It's just not. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, I can only assume it was due to they didn't want to go back and change the DLC, like give it more value, if you know what I mean. But that's not like the first time they've done it. Whenever they've added a new weapons, they've had to do that.
Changing DLC.
It really just feels like they.
I don't want to find out what you said there.
Do it for all of them
because we haven't talked about the DLC yet.
Oh, the DLC that was so bad they had to redo it.
They had to change it.
There was nothing about season 4 that was right the first time, at the very least.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like that is actually. Does that ever happen to cosmetic DLC in anything?
Either most companies don't give a shit, even if people do think it's bad, or Ghost Ship normally just gets it fucking right the first time.
Yeah.
But even now, even with the changes on it, it still looks like a mid tier pass, like framework. Like it still doesn't. I don't like the look of it. It looks ugly, but I can only imagine how terrible it would have been previously. Like how empty it would have been. They just didn't have anything on it, right? They would have had like a couple vials, and that was it.
Yeah, it still led to some nice decisions because obviously, like the paint jobs that they were originally going to use. Because, like, for example, they didn't inherently have to redo the paint jobs that they were using in the DLC, but they did. But those original ones were still added to the game anyway. It's like, yes, it still invoked like the things that we like about Ghost Ship. It still reminded us of certain things.
Yeah, dude. They shouldn't have to invoke it. They should have just got it right.
Yeah.
It really feels like they just. But we don't have a framework. Just put this out, and then like people are like, what is this undercooked shit? And like, oh, and then they put it in the oven for a couple more seconds,
and it doesn't. It doesn't feel good though when you get when the season's own framework is what it was. I have no doubt you remember.
The round one, Builder's Choice. Oh, is it the Rockbox one?
Yeah, of course. It's infected. It's the worst. It's the worst frame. Is it the what? Is it the worst framework?
There is Builder's Choice.
No, I'm not going to let you. No, I'm not going to let you say that. Thankfully, we'll be. Well, I don't know when we're going to do that one, that tier list, because we're going to have to do that again. Probably in a couple months from now still, though. I don't know. But that's going to happen. And I'm not going to let you put Builder's Choice below Infected. That is fucking stupid as sin. That is so dumb. Okay, whatever. But it's still bad, right? That I think most of us thought that we were past getting ugly forced colour frameworks, right? I said that specifically because in the same year we actually got another forced colour framework with the Ghost Ship Guardian, the DLC one. But that's nice. But we got this like disgusting infection that actually doesn't change the weapon models at all. It just adds this horrible, basically maroon-coloured moss that pulsates to our weapons, and that felt kind of whack.
I really think they should have switched them, and then the Rockbox weapon should have gone further. Because then like you would have had the rival weapons where it radically changes the stuff, and then the Rockbox ones that would have done that as well. Like the Rockbox is like disassembled the gun in certain ways. Like it's kind of like fragments of a gun held together by Rockbox.
And honestly, do you want to know something? It would have been better if they had at least done that. Because I don't think as it was this would have worked. But if they had gone further, it would have actually been more appropriate to swap the frameworks. And the Rockbox one would have made more sense to DLC. Like, genuinely. Because your Decontaminator does feel like a performance pass framework. Because I do think there's something going on there with cosmetic tree frameworks, right? There's a slight homogenization going on, I would say.
Yeah. I I do think they set the bar too high with rival presence, not rival, like the rival
Waster.
weapons.
Well, no.
I mean, yeah.
Well, that was the cosmetic tree one. That was a good year for frameworks. Good year for frameworks.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I feel like they set the DLC ones because I think it has just been worse since. Like with how much it changed the gun, and in such a unique way, it hasn't been matched since. But I don't know. The DLC was terrible.
Okay, you're not entirely wrong, but I would encourage you to look at them because the decontaminated ones, even if it's not that interesting, they do change all of the models pretty much entirely. To be honest, it's just not like super. It's just not super unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're paying money like for it, it helps to be a bit better than the free stuff, really.
Yeah, I mean that's basically that's pretty much all of season 4, except the best part of it.
Best part was they tack on at the end, realizing that
it wasn't even so. This was a bad. It wasn't. It was a bad sign when we had like the base patch notes. So this would have been experimental launch, where the only bit of weapon balancing was the Sabata rework, and that was a rework. That one was definitely a rework. So that happened, but that was it.
Which was like fine. It was a fine. They didn't touch overclocks in any notable way.
No, that's true.
Which never great. But the mods they gave it were pretty solid. As in, it's given me a build I actually enjoy using the Sabata for. So cheers for that. The explodey, corrosion-y, double shotty, fun time.
Yeah, it's good. They added some good stuff there, I think, and I think it's overall it is. Saying about the Sabata now, it's more damning for what it was before. In that, I think it is much better now. Even if it's not great, it's still much better. So that tells you something about how it was before.
There is a single reason to use it, which is like 20 times more than before.
Yeah. But what happened in the 2 weeks following, well, during the experimental branch, I think basically Mike just huffed some fucking Adderall or something, and they just sat him down in front of the computer, and they were just like, do something. Start typing. And he did, because we got probably the most fascinating and dynamic round of balance changes that the game's had, I would say, because it was all just picking out underused overclocks and just either completely reorienting what they are, or just making them better. like plasma bursting missiles, which is a great concept that had just been floundered by being nerfed into the ground, just completely undone. Spinning Death, a really okay overclock that was basically just launched into basically stardom, in my opinion, by just giving it a bit more ammo. And then you get things like Double Barrel, which is just taking a mathematically proven to be terrible overclock by people like Lazy Maybe, and then he just turned it into this insane, unstable blast wave overclock that has genuinely not only is it knocked Special Powder off its pedestal, it's actually done a lot for the boomstick in terms of actually sort of reorienting that weapon almost, where people now respect like shaped shells, the accuracy one, and jumbo shells, and obviously double like the boomstick. I like the boomstick now, and I don't just use double barrel. So that was crazy, and there was a bunch of them. I mean, obviously some of them weren't like Snowball. Snowball was a good change technically, but Snowball, it's still Snowball. But Shield Battery Booster became broken. The Hurricane, well, yeah, I've already mentioned the Plasma Bursting Missiles actually became good again, and it's in a really good spot now, where basically Plasma Bursting Missiles was OP when it launched with Season 1 Experimental, and then you nerfed it into the ground before it actually came out, and it had been that way up to this point.
But the one where they swapped out the clean Hurricane one, wasn't that Season 4, or was that the November one?
No,
Okay.
that's this. Yeah. But plasma bursting missiles, not only is it no longer weak, it's actually in a really good spot. It's like actually really balanced, which is better than it being overpowered. And they also added rocket barrage to replace manual guidance cutoff, which is more mixed than you might expect. Though because all of a sudden the manual guidance cutoff heads reared their heads and were like, no, you can't do that. You can't take away manual guidance cutoff. It's my favorite overclock. No, it's not. You're lying. But Rocket Barrage was a big surprise still. Not an amazing overclock, I'm going to be honest, but it was such a blind side. They technically added a new overclock, and they basically did it with double barrel anyway. Even other stuff, neurotoxin payload got nerfed, and that was good. That still went down well because it's still really strong. Carpet bomber got buffed. I think that's actually pretty much it though. But it's kind of just came out of nowhere and was really exciting. And you do have to consider though how much of that was season 4 being disappointing. And I want to say 90%. It will be good anyway. I want to put that out there. This stuff is still good, and I wish there was some of it for season 5, as good as season 5 was.
They knew that season 4 was not enough. I think that it really feels like a fact. They knew that there wasn't that much there because they didn't even wait until people started like complaining about the game to do all that stuff. It was almost instantly as soon as it hit the beta branch, they just started dropping the double barrel because the double barrel got done like 3 or 4 times, right? It like worked its way up through like the tiers of fucking clean but like slightly stronger, and then like unstable, or the balance, and then it ended up in unstable like by the end of the 2 weeks, or 1 week actually, maybe, I'm not sure. Point is, man, was the best part. It really was, and it left a pretty good taste in your mouth until you looked elsewhere. Then you realised, oh no.
Yeah. Well, basically, the reason why though I say that it's not, obviously, that's true. When that stuff starts to lose its novelty, things do start to look a little bit bleak for season 4. But I still hold that this stuff would go down well in any update because it is, in my opinion, pretty much the same as getting. It is the same as getting new overclocks. You know, you can get almost as much out of them.
You can pretend it's replacing one, but it's just a new overclock.
Well, yeah, it was for sure, and we actually used that like specifically. Even you know, I know you don't give a shit about the hurricane, but it's like, well, we got to do it. We've got to try this out. We've got to both use this overclock because it's new.
Yeah, but I like it.
But it still pretty much does the same. It has pretty much the same mileage in that these changes are good enough. Like spinning death, for example, is, in my opinion, really good now. It was fine before, but now it's like great. And plasma bursters became fantastic. And yeah, this stuff would work in any update. It's kind of just magnified by season 4 being a letdown overall. That these changes really were enhanced because they represent basically everything that was missing from the rest of season 4, which was something that was, first of all, good, so that's counting out randomizer, but also something that you could engage with immediately and manually by choice. Everything else was just absent. You know, obviously you would encounter new Rockbox enemies if you went into a live phage outbreak, but not many people wanted to do that, and it's still kind of weird. It's not actually a new piece of content, it's just new enemies in a pre-existing warning. And obviously, Harold, you would have to luck out to find. Jetty Boots, you would have to luck out to find. The new enemies would probably show up quite often, but they are still technically in the same boat. They won't automatically show up. But all of these interesting balance changes were things that you could immediately engage with. And they felt good because we could just do it. We could just use those things. And that felt really good.
I'm going to get on and try, the new snowball like thing. Like, it's not like that. You would go on to do insert new thing here. Meanwhile, like, you couldn't say that for the corruptor. You couldn't say I'm going to go on and Face the Corruptor, you didn't get to choose that. Jetty Boots, you didn't get to choose that. The new enemies, you were likely to find them, but you still couldn't guarantee it. The only thing you can go like, I'm going to go and play this, is either the arcade machine, which, you know...
That's true, yeah.
You do that.
Yeah.
Or randomizer, which no one has ever said. No one's ever like.
I tell you what, randomizer isn't going to give me. Randomizer, chances are randomizer is not going to let me play with any of the new the balance changes.
Yeah.
So
in fact, well, that's what I thought I would have, right? Because I got the hurricane, and I thought, hey ho, I got the little thingies that spin around. I'm going to use that. This is new. And then it turns out to not be that overclock. It's a completely different overclock. And I'm like, okay, so it's actively not giving me the thing I wanted. And that's when I realized randomizer was not worth using. And that season 4 was sad. A very sad time, full of sad people and sadness.
Sad earnest. Sad earnest. Yeah, it's just it was just kind of misguided and misplaced. It was probably doomed as well, let's be honest, by extraneous factors. But that doesn't change it. And it was one of the few times where it genuinely felt like a quality dip as well. It wasn't just poor decision making, it felt like they weren't on the ball either. With actually making the stuff that they had, in my opinion, poorly chosen to make. Randomizer being a real cult, like literally Randomizer and Harold being the main culprits. Really, they were the most unstable and really unattractive elements. And they do kind of represent it as a whole. It's, you know, season 4 is not like a laundry list of things that made the game worse. But it was really it was extremely sparse and almost non-existent in making the game better or adding new valuable experiences to the game. And that's really brings it down a peg. And it was also obviously too little too late. It took too long to get what it was. The updates that followed it obviously improved the game, but they didn't add like obviously the November update was pretty good, but you know, they didn't really change what season 4 was doing because we were still kind of stuck in season 4. And like when it came to, is there actually any new content we can really feast on? No.
Weapon maintenance.
Well, yeah, I know, but the thing is, season 4 really didn't bring anything. It kind of just didn't, and it's kind of whack.
Pulled up,
it's kind of wiggity whack.
The dinner with nothing. It didn't bring any mashed potatoes or nothing. It just farted on the meals. Everyone else's meal. just a nice shit mist all over what was previously served. But then season 5 rocked in the door. And it had the feast of a century, like on a grand platter.
Season 5 brought in like a golden platter of like, you know, perfectly cooked food, and it also brought a gun to shoot season 4 with. Or maybe that was the November update.
Yeah.
No. Season 5 was what you just said. November update was just a hitman. November update was just...
Yeah, he just walks in, fires the trigger, and leaves, and nobody else mourned the death.
Yeah, and then like the February update, I guess, is like season 4's like little cousin or like brother that people like, but he doesn't bring anything to the table either. They just don't. They tolerate his existence. They tolerate
little too. Don't worry about it. He's a kid. He wouldn't bring anything. But he mentions that his
but he does want to play.
Coming.
He wants to play hide and seek though, and he gets everyone to play hide and seek for a bit, and that takes their mind off things.
Yeah,
like straight up. So I think that's the verdict. I think we'll get a more like hierarchical comparative verdict when we do the update tier list.
It's not long now, right?
That will be the next. Well, the next one we're gonna do headgear for some reason, which actually I think it's gonna be alright actually. Because we're gonna have to do it differently as well, slightly differently. But yeah, it's not gonna be too far off. But I think we do have some comments. We do, and I don't think we should ignore them. But before we get into them, I'm going to start. Actually, I'm going to pause now,
All right, we are back.
So we put out a post asking people to tell us what they think about season 4. I guess most of you don't think anything. I guess
we have 1,000 subscribers. Only 2 people stepped up to the plate.
But one of them really stepped up. Maybe too much.
Took the entire plate home. Filled it full of stuff.
Anyway, you're going to be doing the first one, so...
Yeah. From Mr. Cheese!
Yes, from Mr. Cheese, although I do need to make sure I can actually show these in the video. You can start reading if you want.
Alright. This was who I was referring to earlier, by the way. I never had a problem with Season 4, but I think that it could be attributed to the fact that I joined Deep Rock Galactic during the Critical Corruption era. I never disliked the Rock Pops, or the Stingtail, or the Spreader, because those were parts of this new game I had to learn along with everything else. Not a new, unforeseen threat. I didn't care that there wasn't a whole lot of new features, because I had an entirety of Deep Rock to chew on for a while Season 4 ran its course. I wasn't disappointed that Season 4 lasted a full year, because I'm not used to frequent updates to the game I play. All this is to say, I can see why people have been with the game far longer than I would not have taken kindly to Season 4. But for me, Season 4 was Deep Rock Galactic, which is why I never really took an issue with the problems it introduced. Which I think
makes
not based,
perfect sense.
Definitely based.
What you say? Well, hold on, because that's a bit choppy. To say, while not based, is definitely based. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Because while it doesn't mean that like Season 4 didn't have any problems, it's just that like the problems is just as like an update moving forward. It hasn't made the game any worse. It hasn't gotten rid of any of the content previously, like, and yeah, I don't know. It's just a really interesting point, which I'm really fucking glad he left us with, because it's not a perspective we could possibly have come up with on our own. Right? No way, shape, or form could that have been the case.
Do you know what's crazy?
But,
I genuinely think it's probably better for in the vacuum of DRG. It's probably better to have gotten on board with Season 4 than Season 5. Genuinely. And I don't think... it shouldn't be too hard to see why. If you're looking at Deep Rock on its own, because obviously with Season 5, great, but it's all you got for a while. Season 4,
yeah,
you get the updates that follow it, and you get Season 5. I can imagine, Mr. Cheese, you've probably had quite a good experience, actually, since then. And that a lot of the people who jumped on board with Season 5, who aren't informed, might come to be fairly confused when in a year from now, nothing's happened. So I actually can imagine it being a really good time to get on board. You still missed out. The idea that Season 4 was Deep Rock for you is really... upsetting. It's really upsetting.
It's interesting because for us, Deep Rock kind of has been a game that we've watched develop, right? It's a game where we feel like, we've been involved in the process of it evolving and adding new content and the direction it's heading in.
Yeah.
But for him, Deep Rock is done. It's what the game it is, like, obviously not currently because Season 4, but like Deep Rock isn't a game that's being worked on. It's a game that is there. That's it. That's Deep Rock. It's what it is. It's what it still is to us, technically.
Look,
but
I would say
Deep Rock was more of an experience of it growing.
Yeah, I'm not trying to boast. I just think we have a numerically unique perspective, just based on the numbers, because there can't have been more than... It would have been only around 10,000 people who were like on board with the game in like 2018. It wasn't a lot. No more than 50,000 by the end of 2018. I would say. So we're part of a pretty small minority of people who have basically... The game's just constantly being in flux for. And basically, more people than ever are jumping on board as the game starts to change less and less, which is interesting, and they'll never know what they're missing out on.
I think for the people, Deep Rock is just not a game that changes that dynamically. That's why what we're complaining about season 4 didn't add anything and the wait was too long. They're like, there was an update. Like, this is just what it is. And I don't know. I think it's a really cool perspective. And oh, my laptop just got dark. 20% battery and it's gone dark. That's odd. Almost like 15.
Yeah, I want to give you credit though, further credit, I suppose, Mr. Cheese, in that you being able to acknowledge why people were being disappointed by season 4 is actually. This is almost backhanded. I apologize, but it's actually very surprising and impressive because no, you don't have any motive to take into account really what everyone thinks about it. So the fact that you have a perspective on the game that is informed by veterans as well, but it doesn't affect your opinion, like how you feel. You're just aware of that perspective, is quite unique. People don't tend to be aware of other perspectives when they don't need to be. So, thank you, Soldier. What are you doing?
I just knocked my cup over completely onto my laptop, but thankfully it is bone dry with how much I drank from it. I shit myself. I was growing a cat. All right.
Okay. That's fine.
Original Knowles.
What? Don't say my last name.
Knowles. So the next comment's yours then. Is that what the agreement was?
No. But I'll start it. Okay. So this is from let me show it. This is from Real Moth Person. Actually, I believe that based on what it says here, we can call you Unschmoggle. Obviously, that wasn't your real name anyway. So I think just for easiness.
Previously known as. Known as Unschmoggle, which would describe the length of the comment.
Yeah. So
if you want to read this all yourself, watch a viewer person. Go on the post because we are not reading all of it. It would kill us. We would die.
Well, what am I reading then?
Some of it. You're not literally reading all of it, are you? Just grab the point. You've read a book. Read a bit.
I can't do that on the fly.
Well, it just splits it into 3 points, right? Where it's the 3 main problems of season 4.
Okay, yeah, I think we probably can do it a certain way. I won't read out the first part explicitly, but I just want to say congratulations. I hope all of that's gone well, and I really especially want to thank you for taking it upon yourself to become our only female viewer. And I really hope that's not an insensitive joke. I feel like that should go down because I like it. I think that's fucking funny. It's obviously not true, but it's probably close to being true. So thanks for that. And genuinely though, hope that's all gone down well. Well, Tyler, I mean, something tells me you would be better at summarizing than anyway. But part 1 is Rockbox. It's generally liked. They generally like it in its current state. Earth-scorching hatred for infected goo bombers. That's weird. Mactera in general just aren't designed in a way that makes them a good candidate for a Rockbox variant. Particular weak points. Random weak points in other places doesn't work and is supremely fucking annoying. Actually, I kind of agree with that. For Rockbox goo bombers are actually the most annoying when it comes to that because of the way that they move around and position themselves above you. They're very good at hiding their blisters. That does actually come up. Balls are redundant gimmick, areas too small, just end up hovering over weak points. Ooh. Bonus points for choosing the enemy that spews slowing goop everywhere in addition to the enemy group that everyone hates because it has too many stuns. What a splendiferous fucking idea. They could have made infected septics or something. At least then the goop would only damage you and you could also a boil in the arm plates or something. I don't think they would have made a Rockpox variant of one of the new enemies.
That would have been gold.
Yes, it would have been. Let's face it, the weapons are not balanced. I'm not actually going to have this on the screen. It makes it easy for me if I can just sort of like extract stuff as I go through it. Breach Cutter hard counters, maybe being okay if it wasn't just one weapon. It wasn't already busted as fuck. Diffusion Ray Wave Cooker is also a counter. Well, Wave Cooker is also a counter. I hate the idea you should trivialize enemies because some guy brought the funny counter build. On the other hand, many weapons are barely usable, complete garbage, because balls are 2 times weak point bonus on enemies that take 1/5 of damage, meaning effectively only 40% of weapon damage added to the amount dealt. It's basically nothing. Which is basically just talking about the way that Rockpox is constructed. I've always found the Rockpox to be really satisfying to kill with most weapons. Literally everything that isn't just purely area. Like the grenade launcher feels terrible against them, no surprise there. But most stuff feels pretty good. And I think the feedback's always been pretty good. It is funny though that the Breach Cutter is like OP against them, and the PGL might be the worst weapon against them. Side note: the bestiary is telling you the Rockpox spitters are high on combat pheromones 24/7, only for you to find out it has like 0 gameplay significance. Was the DRG version of being told Santa isn't real? Well, I didn't even know that in the first place. So that's fine. Part 2, Corruptor. It's actually quite short. We can do this entire bit of text here. I'm going to be honest with you, this thing is disappointing as shit. Foaming it is inconsistent and it runs away too much and fights too little, with a total result of the most genuinely unfun slog ever added to this game. Not much else to say about it, to be honest. It's just sad.
Yeah, I think
not a bad take at all.
Is always a bad idea, really. It always becomes less fun.
Yeah. And I also agree that the actual, like, the gooing the foaming it up does actually feel slightly inconsistent. It feels like I should be hitting parts that when I vacuum it should work in terms of damaging it, and they just kind of don't. It's like you have to be more precise than you'd imagine to actually hurt the Corruptor. And it's kind of annoying. Oh, did you have part 3? Oh, you don't. I want you to have this. Because you can do part 3
now. Alright. Is there an order to this?
It's the most recent thing.
Oh yeah. I'm not actually gonna shout because I know my mum's asleep, but I will. I pronounce it. Fuck Stingtails, 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 fuck Stingtails. They made them useless without actually fixing anything. How the fuck do you even manage to do that?
Okay. Unfortunately, the entire rest of the comment is all about the Stingtail. It's all... So I really don't know how to get through it. Because it's so focused.
I think this is where we say, audience, we will not read the entirety of this comment. If you wish to see why this person hates the Stingtails as much as that was just implied, please go on the post and then maybe actually leave a comment of your own. So there are more things on there and conversation. But I think we are done.
Yeah, because Unstruggle also came up with their own version of Stingtails, which is buried somewhere in the wall of text. I mean, we should apologize because the post is like pretty clear. It's like you're probably going to be featured in the video, and you have been. It's too much. And I you have to be okay with us saying that it's just too much to go. It's too much to get through, for us to probably not talk about most of it because that's just how it goes. I don't want to be stopping after every sentence, anyway, because that would take hours, right? But also, you get to the end of like a paragraph, I'm not gonna remember everything that was said in it anyway. It's kind of difficult. So, really, just to help everyone. more concise comments are better. I like this. I do like this. I appreciate that you've done this, and you clearly need to get out your system. But to be like featured in a more comprehensive way, short and to the point comments work very well. Because we're kind of just looking for conversation starters, really. But that's that. I think you're right. Yeah. Actually, well, maybe we should have discussed it a bit more beforehand, because it would have probably been better to not actually use the comment at all. To be honest.
Oh yeah, that sounds better. Yeah, that sounds better. Yeah.
But we didn't get much. Didn't we get anything out of it?
Who cares? We just get their voices out there. Don't like Stingtails. Don't like Corruptor. Don't like Rockpox. Basically,
actually, no. They do actually kind of like Rockpox in general.
All right, so that was Barrel Vision Podcast. Thank you all for 1,000 subscribers, first time on the podcast. And thank you, Boxfort Scoop, for being a member.
Still just him.
Always cool. Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it would like it should, but I don't know if it would. But you don't need to be a member to be a cool person, but it helps.
You're all cool, and you've all helped. I don't want to say, yeah. What? Oh.
Barrel Vision apron.
I didn't know, Tyler. I'm genuinely. I didn't know it was that offset, even from like the picture. Jesus Christ.
Pretty bad.
This will be hopefully featured at some point in something. Do you actually intend on doing that?
Well, currently I'm making cookies, as in literally before this recording, I made the dough for cookies. But with cookies, you need to make the dough, put it all together, then put it in the fridge for like 3 days. So it's not really something you would do. I also have no real means of recording because this thing is shit. So basically, no, not really. But I do have official Barrel Vision apron. If you want one, make it yourself.
Just to make it yourself, yeah. I love the idea that our stance on merch is that you should make it yourself, because we know that there aren't going to be enough people who would want it for us to justify manufacturing a stock of any kind. Anyway, so that was the season 4 retrospective. I think probably not going to do this for others. I would like to do season 1 at some point, because season 1 is interesting for obvious reasons. That could be worth coming back to.
Season tier list.
Well, it depends. Well, yeah, I mean that will obviously that would happen before that episode, whenever that would be. So it might invalidate it. We'll see. But look forward to that. I don't know what we're doing next week. To be honest, because it seems like we're on a track to potentially try doing, for now, non-Deep Rock stuff on a regular rota, maybe, and we have things we could talk about. I don't really want to. The plan was actually was originally going to be to see the Borderlands movie.
Yeah, the more stuff I'm seeing on that, the less I want to go see it.
I don't really want to see it either. I don't really want to see it.
It doesn't seem like it'll be a funny, bad movie to watch. It just seems like it would be an actual, genuine waste of money and time and effort.
Yeah. We'll see. Anyway, as always, thank you very much for tuning into the Barrel Vision podcast. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this and stay on top of everything to do with Deep Rock and Roadcore, please click that bell as well. Can you do that again? I wanted a screenshot of that.
No, it's too late.
Grab him. Grab him. Grab him. Grab him. Grab him now. That's pretty good. Good stuff. Good stuff. There. Oh, I accidentally did 2. All right, that's it, guys. Thank you as always. Thank you, everyone. Keep subscribing. Keep watching. Obviously, the last two main Overclock showcases will be coming out next week, followed up the following week by Turret Arc, the reboot version. Anyway, look at him go. Look at him dance for their enjoyment. Can you do the thing with the knees? Knee cam.
No, apparently not.
You can kind of see like my under my bed.
Yeah, it's full of. Is that cum rags?
Is that a dead hooker? Shut up! Shut up! These are angles that we've never seen before.
You want to see my new desk? If you're wondering why it was a different POV, well, it's not a new desk, but I moved the desk over here.
Look at that. You want to see my desk, everyone? Look at my desk. Sucks.
It's a table, it's not a desk.
Exactly. And therein lies the problem. Bye.
And